What is up, YouTube? I'm back here for another video. This time it's going to be a little bit different. I've got my buddy Laura and Barry here. Uh, these are two guys that I have continuously dueled with for the last little bit. Me and Laura went to Nats together, where Laura and Barry, we all went. Yeah. So they got to compete in the main event. I did not, unfortunately, because I'm not as good. I'm still getting there. Laura here made day two with Rika. So today's discussion video is something that's become a huge topic across YouTube and Facebook. Is there a problem with Yu-Gi-Oh?
Is
And,
there a problem with Yugioh? Go
yeah,
ahead and throw myself in here with a quick introduction. Hello, everyone. It is I, Lara the Lord. Well, at least as far as the YouTube name is concerned, just Lara is all I really care to go by. But, now, with that out of the way, is there a problem with Yu-Gi-Oh? Now, it depends on exactly what you mean by the context of it. As in a competitive standpoint, I feel it is about in a decently good position, mostly because of how wide the variety of the meta is. Now, I know there are some people that don't really like that because they want to be able to maintain consistency in what to like expect to play up against. Like, for example, in toss format, you would almost always expect to see Salad, Striker, Orcus, Thunder Dragon, or in what was it, the Shadal, Burning Abyss, and I always forget the third one. What was it? It wasn't Spiral, was it? No, something. I always forget. But it was just like that triangle format. The triangle formats or square formats are what people typically tend to like, just because they are able to consistently
it's
figure out what they want to build alongside of it, what to play against. And where this one's so much wider, you have Kashtira, Vanquish Soul, Chimera, Branded, so many other decks that people are able to play. Even other decks that kind of fell off but came back, like Drytron. So some people might consider that to not be a good position, but I personally believe that is a good position, as far as like what's played meta-wise. But I think the main thing what people are going for with the topic of is it in a good spot is, I think, just product. Because I'm gonna be honest, Dune is not a good set, with the exception of like Rev Synchron and maybe two other cards. Dune is not that good of a set. Legendary Duelists are never a good set, and
the tens aren't looking too great as of right now.
yeah, the
Yeah.
2023 Mega Tins. I know they officially posted the full set list of that too, which they look pretty good. There are some cards that is hit or miss as far as like, do we want to get them, do we not want to get them type deal. And then Syac I feel was kind of like borderline mid. It had some good stuff. It had not good stuff. I think for the most part, if you're just building certain decks from it, like Gold Pride, then it was a pretty good set for that. But if you look at it objectively, there wasn't like too much that was very defining in that set.
So in terms of, so we'll start with product. I wasn't going to start with product, but you pulled us right into the whole product thing. So I don't know if you follow Ruxin, but he done a whole thing about the pretty much the placement of where the game is currently with product. For some of the content creators that do the pack openings, they're not even able to chase every card in the set right now because within 2 weeks they've got another product dropping.
Mm.
It's like we've got product dropping every 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, and by the time the next set comes out, no one is wanting to open the previous set. And usually within 2 weeks, people stop opening product because they're preparing for the next set, if it isn't out yet. So I do think that they have kind of like threw way too much product at us. No, I don't buy every product. There's just no way. Like, I've only bought like one speed duel item in the last year to 2 years. So in terms of product, we get bombarded with product over and over and over again, like
Yeah.
ever so, like way too frequent. And then on top of that, like you said, some of the sets are, it's always top heavy. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be top heavy. With Dune, you had Revolution Synchron, Crimson Dragon, and maybe 2 other good cards, and then, but most of the good cards are all secret rares. Okay, so you put you put 2 to 3 good cards, and then there's a bunch of pack fillers. So it makes it really hard to open product, which is why a lot of the shops are struggling right now, because people aren't opening and buying the product like it should be.
Yeah.
Now, if
And
so, my observation there is like we're in a pretty rough spot when it comes to product, or at least product placement for like the timeline. Like, don't get me wrong, I love getting a new set. I love being able to build a new deck and try to test it out and play it and stuff. But it gets way too expensive when there's literally a new set every 2 to 4 weeks.
yeah, that thing, and that also too is like they're just printing so many cards and then just spitting them at us like in rapid succession. And I wouldn't want to like continuously buy like multiple boxes. Like for example, Soul Burning in the Soul Burner, Legacy Duelist, Legendary Duelist set. Volcanics look pretty cool, but I don't want to spend 100 plus for 2 or more boxes just to build
Volcanic.
just to build the deck when I can potentially like buy the singles for substantially less. Which I mean, I know almost everyone's always preached that single always, if you're looking to just for specific cards, then always buy the singles versus the sealed product. Of course, the sealed product you have the possibility of getting what you want plus more. We'll use a funny example of one that I did with what was it? The Battle Legend set, Monstrous Revenge. I literally only bought a box because I wanted to pull Azalea. I pulled Azalea, but then I also pulled a Quarter Century Zeus. So that is one of the very rare examples of like going for some, like trying to get what you want and then plussing more.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work that way consistently, and it will never work that way.
No, and I feel like that's part of the issue is when they do these sets, I get that they're trying to put out multiple sets, but I feel like if they doubled the size of the set and then only release like a set like half as long, maybe wait twice as long, maybe do a set here and then like a month and a half, 2 months down the road, release another set. At least then you've got this long for somebody to be able to pull everything they want to out of the set. The set will sell. The shops should get what they need out of it. The whole 9 yards. There's a couple different ways they could go about fixing this situation. And then on top of that, with the way they do it, it feels like it takes forever for some of these power cards to get a reprint.
Yeah. Let's look at Pot of Prosperity, for example. That card came out in Blazing Vortex. No one wants to buy Blazing Vortex because nothing good is in Blazing Vortex except Pot of Prosperity. Which is why it hung on to its $150 price tag for like so long.
Yep.
And then it finally got reprinted in the 2022 Megatins. After, what was that, a year and a half?
Almost a year and a half. And then on top of that, it was still a $50 card, $60 card, for a while even being inside the tens. There was a little bit of price fluctuation there with Prosperity, but it makes it okay, and that can actually bring us into the next part of this. There was another thing on YouTube and Facebook over the cost of the game as overall. Mm-hmm. So the way they did this is if you bought the lowest rarity of the World Championship for Pokemon, its deck, you might spend $30 on the deck.
Yeah.
For a World Championship caliber deck. Okay?
Yeah, and I agree on that statement because way back when I played Pokemon for a little bit, and it's so inexpensive to play the game because you can virtually build yourself a competent deck for freaking lunch money.
Yeah.
You can, if we're talking about today's standards, you can buy 2 Taco Bell boxes for the cost of a competent competitive deck.
Yeah. And when you compare that to something like standard Yu-Gi-Oh, what I seen Sprite Core the other day listed at close to $100, and that's just a Sprite Core. It's a good deck, but it's not. It's
Yeah, I
not
mean,
the
if you
best
tell that
deck
to
in
a
the
Yu-Gi-Oh player, they'll say
yeah.
like $100
Oh,
for a
that's not
deck or for a
bad.
deck core. Then that's like, yeah, that's really
That's not
good in
bad.
terms
That's
of
not
Yu-Gi-Oh
bad. But
standards.
we've been playing. I don't know about you, but I've been playing this game off and on since it came out, so I'm used to the cost of the cards.
Right.
So, but to someone that's just starting or wanting to get back into the game or something like that, sometimes $100 for a competent deck. No, don't get me wrong. I understand. So, before the comments come at me, I understand that you can build a budget deck and be competitive. Trap Tricks and other decks like that, I mean, they've showed it that you can build a deck for less than $50 and have a
Branded
competent.
before the Bestials.
Right. But you can have a competent deck for less than $50. I get that. But you're not going to be able to compete at a high tier level. And it's not going to be able to keep you going for very long.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that because the last time that I was at locals for setting up the fighting games scene, I was having a conversation with one of our regulars, and he was talking about potentially trying to get into Yu-Gi-Oh. And he comes from Magic, so he's no stranger to expensive cards. Um, but I was just telling him because as far as like for the most part, like if you can build a competent budget deck that can perform well in a local, maybe even a regional setting like Trap Tricks, but anything higher than like a YCS or WCQ or anything like that, you might struggle a lot more and might not see the same results that you have been seeing in said regionals or locals. And then it also comes into a point too, like as we're talking about the budget of the game, which I think is another point where people would say the general health of the game as a whole would lie is in its price point. Because let's take Riga Sun Avalon for example. Before it won Nats the first year, it was like maybe $50 to build the whole deck, with the exception of Glamour and Teardrop, because at the time they were the only short printed cards of that set, and they were like, I think Teardrop was $20, and then Glamour was like 10 or 15. So it was those are the only cards that are relatively expensive. The rest was like less than $5. Then we fast forward to it winning Euronats the first year, and everything just like jumped up to where it became a lot more of an expensive deck. Jasmine's going to 20, and then the Teardrop shooting up higher to like closer to 30, Glamour shooting up closer to 20s, and then of course, well, I will not include staples because everyone always knows staples are always going to be the most expensive part in a deck. But it's also interesting too because we go back to that statement of a budget competitive deck, and then we look at Punk Gold Pride. Its first rendition, like its first few months or weeks after it came out in SIAC, or it finished out in SIAC, it was relatively expensive because everything was high rarity. Then we fast forward a month or two, and then everything is like relatively budget to build the deck. It doesn't even cost that much to make it in Yu-Gi-Oh standards. But it's also a thing with the market too, because there's like so much build up, so much hype that people have for some of these decks that it just generates a lot of a demand.
Right. And when the demand is high, usually the card prices are higher, and so on and so forth. I mean, we've seen it 100 times where a card will do good in a deck, and then all of a sudden the card will shoot up. But in overall terms, I do feel like Yu-Gi-Oh is a little bit on the expensive side comparatively,
And I agree.
because a card will hold a $40-$50 price tag for, let's say, a year, and you still got tournaments going, so you don't want to sell that card because you're using that card in a deck, and then all of a sudden it pops up as a reprint and you lose all your value there. Which, don't get me wrong, I understand that, if you wait that long to get rid of a card, you're going to lose value on the card. But on the second hand, having to spend that much on a card to begin with can be a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, and then another thing I want to point to is in these off-season times or banless spheres also have fluctuate a lot with it more, because right now, before we knew about no, that's a different topic. We'll look at Cash Tier right now. I'm not going to go about its whole history of its price tag, but for after that last ban list that it survived with Unicorn going to 2 and Rise Heart going to 1, everything in that deck kind of like consisted, not everything, but like Fenrir stayed at like the $40 to $60 margin, and then right now with the now the WCQ is over and the ban list fears are kind of coming around, Fenrir is like a $20 card now.
Yep, they drop instantly, lose half their value. And then, of course, if it doesn't get hit on the ban list, it's going to go back up again. So,
and then something like that will also deter some players from trying to pick up that deck. Like maybe there's someone that's been wanting to try to play Cash Tier for the longest because they like the artwork, they like how it plays, or like what it can do. And then everything's at its all-time low for that deck, so they want to try to pick it up. But then they're afraid that if they do like invest fully into it, like get the 3 Fenrirs, get the 2 Unicorns, etc., then they get them, and then here comes the ban list, and like Fenrir's at 1, Theosis is at 1, things like and Planets at 1, things like that, and then it's just like.
And it'll be a complete replay of what happened with Tier.
Yeah, man, bring back Tier. Tier limit strongest.
Outside of everything that we've talked about right now, honestly, if they just, I think me and you've had this discussion. I honestly believe Tier would be perfectly fine if they would just ban the Ishizu cards.
Yeah. But Konami doesn't want to acknowledge a mistake.
Like, that's just my 2 cents on that little snippet. Back to, does Yu-Gi-Oh! Have a problem? The next thing of that's making a lot of noise over social media and everything the last little bit is the ability to bring new players in and the complication of the game.
That's a fun topic.
It's a fun topic, and I know we probably don't want to go like too in depth with this because we could probably do like a 30-minute, hour-long video on
that topic alone.
And of course, we don't want to do this. We just want to hit and get like a discussion going in the comments and that type of stuff. But overall, it is a lot harder for people to get into the game unless they have someone there to teach them the entire game.
Yeah.
And I know I played for years, and I quit playing. I took a break. It was about a 3-year break before Lynx came out. And the last deck I had played before I quit playing was Burning Abyss.
Let's go.
So I knew how to play Burning Abyss. So when I came back, of course, I looked at the ban list and I found the locals to go to, that type of thing. And when I started playing, it was a little complicated because it was completely different. So just from going from 2014, 2015, 2016 to like 2018, 2019, 2020, yeah, going from just those 3 years, the game changed so much. And then even after I joined or come back, they switched from Master Rule 4 to Master Rule 5, and the game changed again and got a lot more fast-paced. So for me, it was a learning curve. For myself, someone that had been playing the game for years, just for learning the links and being able to pick up on the new combos and the new play styles and that type of thing. And as much as I love Burning Abyss, when I come back, at the time, that was around the time that the Burning Block BA was going nuts. So I was like, okay, this is fun. But I was completely playing the deck wrong because I completely lost track on how to go through with like the links and everything else. So I can understand why it's so hard for a new player or someone to just start the game. Now, granted, ever since I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh, if I go and try to learn a new card game, learning a different card game is so much simpler. Like, when I picked up Magic 2 years ago, I had seen it before and I'd been had it explained, but Magic was so much easier to pick up on than trying to learn new playstyles in Yu-Gi-Oh. And even after playing. So I do feel like we have an issue in that standpoint, but I would like to hear what you have to say on on that part, because I don't think me and you've ever had this discussion.
No, I don't think we have, and it is very difficult to get in, especially for modern Yu-Gi-Oh. It is difficult to for a new player to get in because there's just so much that's there. It can be daunting for them to try to pick up and learn. For example, as you mentioned, link summoning as a mechanic, and you're giving the person that's trying to learn the game a mechanic, and if they want to try to go in depth with that mechanic, then they have to pay attention to like where the link arrows are going to, if something's locking you in or out of something, if you can't, what happens if you like accidentally place something there. So there's a lot more in regards to that that does prevent them from just kind of learning. Because the last time I had played competitively was at the end, like right before, like it was right around Storm of Ragnarok was the last time I had played competitively, and then I tried to get back in with Burning Abyss. And then I wasn't able to find a local, so then I kind of had to take another break by force. But well, it's not too recent, it's been about a year now. I got my little brother into Yu-Gi-Oh! And the way I did it for him, I just kind of like got a few decks. I think this was at the time of the first Legendary Collection with like the three Yugi decks with like the one from Duelist Kingdom, one from Battle City, and the one at the end of the series. And then I just kind of like played with him a little bit with that, kind of at least teach him the basics of the mechanics, like normal summoning, spells, traps, etc., etc., and then just try to like wean him into it as far as that goes. I'm not going to get into a topic of like, you can play these decks that can help you learn a mechanic, but then here's another deck you want to play, and it's a completely different mechanic.
Right.
But it's definitely difficult for new people to get in, and of course they see the pace of it, then you go to a locals, you can get Gimmick Puppet locked, and then you're just not playing the game. So that's also going to be something very daunting to them too, because they hear about like, oh, there's this card that exists that that just banishes everything, or this card that exists that they summon it to you, then you just can't play the game. So it gets very very difficult for them to want to play, which is why I'm kind of fond of stuff like Rush Duel and the OCG, and then Speed Duel here, because Speed Duel is definitely a different format. It's a lot simpler, a lot slower, but it's also not slow. But it like also has a funny gimmick to it that does make it a lot more interesting to the old player and to the newcomer.
With with the skill cards.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I will say that I know this is a product that's been announced. I don't think it's released in the OCG yet, but it's the two-player starter.
The two-player starter decks, and it's supposed, from my understanding, is it's supposed to have a complete play-by-play guide that teaches two players how to play the game.
Oh, that's really cool.
It's supposed to have a full like kind of like a script, like a scripted duel, to be able to teach players how to play, and it's supposed to go through all four extra deck mechanics, the whole 9 yards. So there's different things that we get to see if that's going to actually work, but it's up in the air on how that works. So that was like the 3 main points that I wanted to go over in the video. So let's go back to the initial question. Does Yu-Gi-Oh! Have an actual problem?
And I know I mashed a lot on that topic, so I didn't really get to hear what your main take on it was. So let me go ahead and hear your take.
So my main thing is, I think every card game, just like every game or everything, is going to have its problems.
Yeah.
Like, the perks of this is we don't have rotation, but we have the ban list. Mm-hmm. So when we look at our ban list, it's Konami's chance to be able to make the game new, fresh, and be able to bolster some strategies and weaken some other strategies. The issue that I see with that is sometimes it does seem like they ban stuff just to push new product. I'm not saying they do, I'm not saying they don't, but sometimes it does seem like that's the case. Outside of that, I don't think that we have as much of a problem as a lot of people are making it out to be. But I do still feel like we do have like slight little problems that could be fixed, and could be fixed easily. But I think our number one problem for the game is building a new player base and bringing new players in. So with that part, I feel like if they actually like lean in more to the older formats, whether it be Go or Edison or hand format, I mean, I would be perfectly fine for seeing Like, instead of giving us new product every 2 to 3 weeks for standard or just speed duel, they could drop a product every couple of months for an older format
Yeah,
and be
and
able
it's
to
funny
help
that
bring
you
people in.
yeah, and it's a little funny that you mentioned that because at WCQ they did have the
The
what they
Edison,
call it, the Ultimate Time Wizard
yeah,
format. That was pretty much an Edison format, and I know a lot of people were like very excited to play that, and then
they had
there
a
was a bunch of funny
if
mishaps
there
too.
was over 200 players
Yeah, which is
for
pretty good,
Edison. So
especially
I
for
mean
that.
that's really good for just, a one-off tournament or whatever. But hopefully that made them see that, hey, they could make money off of this.
Yeah,
Because
and then
there's
but the other interesting thing here is that they do have those official formats too. As official formats, there's the Time Wizard format, which is pretty much as the name states, it plays in whatever format of whatever
yep.
month and year. And then there's like another official format for them. I can't remember the name of it. I never researched into it, so that's my fault. But then there's one that I looked into that is actually very interesting. It's a Heart of the Underdog format, and essentially what that is it's pretty much
A pre
anything
the
very meta relevant, anything meta relevant like major floodgates, and
it's
some of the there was like some of the restriction on it too, and then of course the current ban list all play into this format. So a lot like it's a format that just lets you be able to play like any rogue or below rogue deck
right,
and potentially be able to do well with that. Like for example, I'm going to say Valance. Like that deck's not going to see any kind of competitive play, but
right,
in that specific format, it might be a very competent strategy because you don't have to worry about getting killed with a random skill drain or a Droll Lockbird. But you can still get hit with something like Ash Blossom.
right. So so I guess my time is up for this topic. Uh,
Okay.
my daughter is waking up, so
Uh-oh.
I need to attend to my daughter. But you two, thank you for joining us with this discussion. Make sure you like and subscribe to be able to come
Yes,
in
yes.
for more
Appreciate
discussions.
each and every one of you for checking us out.
Um,
And as I always say, I hope you all have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day.